Welcome to Scoreography, a show about figure skating, the best sport on ice. I am Wendy Buskey, and I'm here with my husband, Adrian Buskey.
And we are back after quite a long delay. If you had joined us from the near beginning of the show, we had put out like 4 episodes early in the season. And then as we got towards the end of the year, we had what happens to a lot of people, the holidays and work stuff and just a life in general. And we just got really hit at the end of the year, having a hard time keeping up with the schedule. And also we had problems even just trying to watch a lot of the competitions.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's like everybody has time issues when it comes to the end of the year. But then you also add on the fact that skating is not exactly easy to watch these days if you haven't noticed already. So especially if it is not on network television or a streaming service, and replays have not been available in the United States whenever things do air on Peacock or NBC, that leaves us kind of nowhere without our VPN, which we have been trying to use, but it just gets complicated.
It's also goofy stuff like, a lot of the competitions are international, so they're on at times when you just can't watch them. And like you said, so replay issues are a thing, whatever. A thing that was actually pretty nice is we watched the FISU games, and we're not going to go into those right now, but but those were on like ESPN Plus and replays were available. And so,
yeah, a lot of it's still on YouTube. So if you want to go watch Kaori Sakamoto and Mai Mihara skate recently in the U.S. in Lake Placid, New York, that stuff's there for you. So highly recommend. But we are here to talk about the United States National Figure Skating Championships.
In case it's not obvious, I mean, we are U.S. citizens. So this is our domestic competition, and our focus is generally U.S. first and then beyond. Even though a lot of our faves are international, we're going to talk about the home team here. We have a lot of the previous competitions that we missed as far as talking about the show. And I don't know if we'll recap those at some point or not.
Maybe in a preview for World Championships. But right now we're here for the U.S. Nationals.
Right. So let's just dive right into the U.S. Nationals. Were in San Jose, California.
Which happens to be the first place that I ever skated myself on the ice at the San Jose Arena. I don't think it's actually called that anymore. But whatever it's called, it's the same place that opened in 1993. Fun fact.
That's really fancy, and I did not know that. I first skated the one and only time at some random place in Illinois that I can't remember the name of when I was in college.
Mine included an autograph session with Peggy Fleming.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow.
As far as U.S. Nationals, San Jose has hosted a lot of those events and has a lot of the skaters, the veteran skaters, have big memories attached to it there.
Well, and if you're not familiar with the Bay Area of the United States being a hub for figure skating elites, think of it this way. The San Jose Arena is about 30 minutes from where Brian Boitano, Christy Yamaguchi, and many, many others are all from. Karen Chen is from the Bay Area. I believe Vincent Zhou. It's like there's a lot of people that are big names from there. So they get a lot of competitions for good reasons.
Yeah. Like the good old hometown advantage there for a lot of people. So, yeah. And I mean, in this particular event, it's been an interesting season all the way around as far as some real high highs and then a lot of, skaters on the come up that are not quite beyond junior level, but are competing right now, since a lot of the previous Olympic quads worth of really talented people have hung up their skates or stepped away for the time being. And this competition is no different. Some really, really stellar standout stuff. A lot of really mid-tier, pretty forgettable, sometimes even to the point of being slightly embarrassing when you think about things that were playing in primetime.
Unfortunately.
But a lot to get into. So let's jump right into the U.S. men's competition to start off with.
Which to me is just Jason Brown is everything, and figure skating needs him so badly it hurts.
Yeah. So just as the quick sum up for it, the 1, 2, 3 on this, Ilia Malinin took the gold. Jason Brown came out of essentially his, quasi retirement of, the last, because he hasn't competed
since the 2022 Winter Olympics.
So, I mean, he sat out this season, and then because he's an Olympian and because he was, such a notable person, he was able to just basically walk on at the Nationals. And he proved why he could do that by putting on 2 absolutely stellar performances.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And as typically is the case, kind of, and an endless debate. And I want to touch on this a little bit. The debate between the artistry and the jumping, the artistry and the athleticism in skating. Malinin took first and Jason took second. And they're very diametrically opposed skaters.
In every way.
Yeah, because Malinin is the jumper. He's the technician. Obviously, the quad axel is there, which is an astounding achievement for a skater.
Didn't land it in this competition.
Didn't land it. Yeah, he actually fell on it, which is the first time I think we've seen him fall. Or
in a competition this year on that. Yeah, I think it is. Because I think he landed it at every other competition I've seen.
Yeah, he was so stellar on it at all the other competitions. And I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit there with that. We'll get to it. But yeah, I mean, like, he is the jumper, the technician, and his artistry is definitely lacking, but he's advancing it. It's grown a ton over this year alone, and I think he'll get there. Jason Brown is artistry, but yeah. I mean, he's the definition of art on ice. But he does not have quads. He has beautiful triples, but he can't land quads consistently enough to put them into his programs. So you have the one guy in skating who is like a legitimate like world podium threat without any quads, but there's like nobody else really operating at that level because Jason Brown's skating level is so astounding.
Yes. It's a really interesting, and why I was so happy to see both of them at this competition. In terms of how you were talking about Malinin versus Brown, I mean, in the short program specifically, that competition overall was fairly weak and disappointing because there's a lot of talent in the men's field, and the U.S. has a fairly strong program for men, but you wouldn't have known it watching this particular competition short program until you saw Ilia Malinin and Jason Brown's, which were beyond world class. Just both of them laid it down, both scoring over 100 points, which was incredible. The fact that Jason Brown can score over 100 points without quads is astonishing. It's just really interesting to watch how two different approaches can come so close, because Malinin landed 2 quads, his triple axel, and really has come a long way with his component scores. Like, his artistry has advanced. His overall skating skills have improved. And he was only 10 points ahead of Jason Brown with no quads.
Yeah. And it could be argued that Ilia's component scores were kind of overscored a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I think it actually should have been closer.
Yeah. I think that in a fair system, I think it would have been a lot closer. I still think Ilia would have taken it.
Yes.
But I think the margin would have been more like 5 points or even like 3 points because Jason's was nearly perfect. I
don't think I've seen a better short program possibly ever.
Yeah, even maybe better than his Centerman program, which is
just crazy to say.
Yeah, because that's one of the all-time greats at this point. But his short program to the song Melancholy is nothing short of astonishing.
If you can find it online, please do.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it already, it really is an absolute work of art, and it's watching an artist at the peak of their ability. And for a guy to have not competed this season, he did some pro-am stuff and he toured. He was always skating.
Yeah.
But he didn't do the Grand Prix. He didn't do any of the typical stuff. Jason just rolled into the building and put on a master class. And that is such an accomplishment of its own that it's really quite astonishing.
Yeah. I do want to give praise, and I think I already did, but maybe a little more. Malinin has so much pressure on him.
Yeah.
As basically the face of the future of figure skating in the United States. It is not subtle. You watch any competition with him in it, and they talk about him like he's already a legend. And to a degree, as the guy who was the first person to land the quadruple axel, he kind of is. But he's also still an 18-year-old kid who has a long road ahead of him. And this was his first expected national title. The pressure was enormous on him. And you would not have known that in the short program. He had so much swag. He was ready and prepared. And then you went into the long program and you saw it, and it was all over him. He still did a beautiful job. It was very obvious just in the warm-up that he was wearing his stress.
It's kind of a fascinating thing to watch because in the short program, he was the definition of confidence. And that's interesting because he has not skated a clean short the entire season.
No, he has not.
On the Grand Prix, the thing you saw over and over again was him to kind of falter, always having kind of a mess of a short program. and putting himself in a rough position. He'd always be third or fourth or even fifth, I think, at a couple of the Grand Prix, and then having to make up the difference in order to, get back to the top of the podium or near it by having just astonishing free skates. This time he came in with uber confidence and competence that he had prepared over and over again to refine. He changed his outfit. He changed elements of that short program, and he delivered something really magnetic and impressive. But then you saw him go into the warm-up before the free skate, and a totally different Ilia Malinin showed up.
Absolutely. His hair was different. Everything was different. He went from looking like a trained professional who had zero doubt in his ability to coming out, and suddenly you could see the kid.
Yeah.
Like the teenager who was, I wouldn't say terrified, but definitely deeply insecure.
In the house, when we're watching these things, I often joke that Ilia has like very specific Ilia things that he does. Like, and because he looks like me as a teenager, it's doubly...
It's so weird that he looks so much like you.
He's identical to me when I was about 15. His like two-handed wave that he does, which is a very signature kind of move in the kiss and cry. But there's a thing that he'll do when you know that he's nervous, and that's he does this blowout thing where it's like he blows his cheeks out and blows out a big breath. And he did it several times right before taking the ice, or just as he was taking the ice to do the free program. And I was like, oh shit, Ilia is not in the right headspace. It's very, very clear. And
he has no poker face.
There's no poker face there.
It's not Nathan Chen, who would come out and have like, you would just not know. I've seen hundreds of Nathan Chen programs, and his face was usually the same in the beginning, no matter what would happen.
Yeah. He's stoic, and Ilia has it a little bit more written all over. But so when we mentioned the short program, we're really only talking about the two of them in the short program because most of the rest of it wasn't particularly good. Now, going into the free skate, what I thought was really interesting was that while the short program was a mess of pretty bad performances and then two absolutely blow the roof off ones, the men actually showed up.
Oh, for sure.
For the free skate.
They came to play, and it was really fun to watch because you could tell that it was a lot of guys who knew, hey, I didn't do what I wanted to yesterday. I'm going to make up for it now. My favorite was Jimmy Ma. Jimmy Ma, I always want the best for Jimmy Ma. I don't know what it is, but he's just so much fun to watch. And he had a really rough short program, and he came out in the free and just killed it.
So Jimmy Ma is a guy who's been on the circuit for a really long time. He's this tiny little dude. He's a concert pianist outside of the realm of skating. He's a quiet, shy. He calls himself a mama's boy. But on the ice, he's bombastic. He skates to like EDM. He is
the biggest hype man.
Yeah. And I mean, he's notable for having done the Turn Down for What performance several years ago, which really stood out in that season. And it was very, very entertaining, big crowd pleaser. But what we've seen of him in the last couple of years has been a mess.
Super inconsistent.
Yeah, like just a lot of thrown away jumps. And he always comes out with a ton of energy, but often the wild man. And his free skate at the U.S. Nationals this time it still wasn't like a perfect refined thing. There were some issues here and there.
But he fought through all of it. And he landed everything.
Yeah, he landed everything. There were 2 foot some issues and stuff here and there. But the end result was a really fun program that got the crowd super hyped. And you could tell that Jimmy was thrilled.
Oh, yeah. Big time. It was so much fun to watch him on the ice and in the kiss and cry. He knew that he had laid down the best thing he had, if not ever, at least in a really long time.
Yeah. Like you could see the adrenaline high that Jimmy was running on. He could barely contain himself.
I do not envy anyone that had to deal with him for the rest of that evening, because he was bouncing off the wall.
Absolutely. And the end result for that was a 5th place finish for him. But for him, that was a really good spot to land in.
Oh, that's huge.
And it got him named as an alternate.
He's an alternate on the world team. And he is, I think, he's part of the Four Continents team going. So that's really great.
It was it was exciting to see for him. The 3rd place finish was out of nowhere for me. I did not know this guy.
Andrew Torgashev. So he's been around for a while. I mean, he's 21, but he has taken the past 2 years to recover from injuries. He never really got a chance to get his feet under him. as he kind of debuted as a young skater in seniors, and then didn't have 2 years of competition essentially, and then came out here and got a bronze medal and just absolutely destroyed it in the long program.
Yeah, his long program was fast, super energetic, big jumps,
polished jumps.
Yes,
not just perfect, not just big, but this guy came out and looked like he was made for this. It was that level of finish on them was light years ahead of so much of the competition. It was great. After
seeing a lot of, like I said, mid-tier stuff the day before, suddenly we saw people come alive and fight like it was, the start of something new. And Torgashev really surprised me, came out of nowhere and was so much fun to watch. Great program, and absolutely deserved that third place finish, and made me feel like, unlike in a couple of the other competitions where it felt like third place was kind of there's somebody else here, but not anywhere near. And granted, his point level was much lower than Jason and Ilia, but the end result was a podium you could be really proud of, because that free skate was just freaking dynamite.
It was really, really fantastic. But, obviously the show was still the top two guys.
Yeah.
What was really super interesting to me was Jason Brown. I mean, again, art on ice, incredible work, and damn near flawless until his very last jump, which was his triple flip right at the end of the program that he went into, like following a knee slide, and it was so dramatic, and then it just didn't work. But regardless, ridiculous standing ovation from the entire crowd in the arena. A magical moment. Beautiful.
That fall was the only ungraceful thing I have seen Jason Brown do in years.
I know.
Because, he comes out of that slide and you can see that he lost the momentum right before going into it. Yeah, he lost a
bit of speed.
We expect that element will change by the time he goes to Worlds.
Or he's going to find a way to make it perfect. I don't know.
That's true. But regardless, oh my gosh, just glorious.
It was like tingle inducing. It was spectacular.
Yeah, it was a heck of a show.
Massively.
Yeah, huge score. And then, like we were saying earlier, Ilia showed up, looked really nervous. His free skate was really interesting because we saw a fallible long program from him. We saw him fall on the quad axle. We saw him double 2 of his jumps.
That was actually more shocking than the quad axle.
Yeah.
The quad axle fall, I feel like he can go out there, try a quad axle and fall, and it's not really going to phase him that much for the rest of the program. It's more whenever he started doubling other jumps where I'm like, oh, that's really bad.
Yeah.
Like, because that's completely out of character.
Yeah. The wild thing, though, he got it together and skated clean through things after he got through some of those bobbles. But we kind of noted, you could see him get mad.
Yes.
And when he got mad, he got better. Like, it seemed like his focus returned. And then the really crazy thing was, in his last jump, he had planned to do 6 quads in that competition, which nobody's done before. I think the most we've ever seen is 5, because Nathan could do 5, but then, he would still do a triple axle because nobody could do a quad yet. But with Ilia, obviously that didn't work out. But his last jump was a triple. And then he turned it into a triple combination.
Well, it was supposed to be a triple Lutz, triple axle combination, which is in and of itself absurd. It's crazy hard. And as someone who has watched skating for decades, the fact that people even do that combination now just boggles me on occasion. But he turned it into a triple Lutz, triple axle, triple toe combination, which ended up being a 26-point jump sequence.
Yeah, it was like a 21 something base value, and then with its GOE, something like 26 points. It was
absurd,
out of this world, like huge element to throw right there at the end.
Yes, completely out of nowhere, and you could hear Johnny Weir and Tara Lipinski just sort of momentarily be like, "What? What just happened?" Because it was definitely, not only was it exciting to see something so difficult out of nowhere, but also, man, if you wanted a reason to give this kid his first national title, that's it. Where it's like he had already earned it on the ice with all of the quads that he did, but that jump sequence showed the fight. That, I mean, like you said, he got angry. And when he got angry, he just showed up and was like, no, I am not leaving this on the ice. I'm putting it down so that there is a final exclamation point on, no, I'm going to take this, even if I'm not perfect today.
One of the things that many professional skaters struggle with is actual improvisation in their programs. They know that they have to be able to take a fall and get back up, or, you know, adjust on the fly to some things, but very few of them seem capable of actually changing out a jump or something, because there's a lot that goes into it. Your choreography is built to allow you to go into the you know, jumps on the right edge at the right angle, and, you know, in the direction you need to go in. And really the only skaters that we have seen that are ever really good at just changing it on the fly were Nathan Chen and Yuzu Hanyu.
Yuzu would do it to a degree, but no one has ever done it like Nathan did. Nathan was just he was like a wizard. He just would like change his entire program just in the moment, just decide like, I always think of it as like Lego blocks. He'd just like shake out all the Lego blocks and be like, no, I'm going to put it together this way today. Yeah.
And part of why that's so difficult is because there are, you know, restrictions on how many of a certain kind of jump you can throw as your primary jumps, and all the things that you have to do in it. And obviously, I mean, the thing that happens a lot where people do have to improvise is in the short program, because the short program is really unforgiving. And because, you know, if you don't get the thing you're supposed to do, you get no points. That is brutal in the short. And so what often happens is if people, you know, go to throw their combination, let's say they're going to do a triple or a triple double, and then for whatever reason they trip up on the first jump, they can't pull off the second one. They have to be able to fit that somewhere into their other two jumps, or they're going to get 0 points on that.
And that has become a much more commonplace now that there is, well, I mean, the short program has always been unforgiving, but people have gotten better about the improv there. But to the point of Malinin's extra jump there, the closest thing I could think of off the top of my head was a world championship years ago where I saw Todd Eldridge throw triple axel at the very end of his program to win a world title out of nowhere. And it's that kind of level of holy crap that just happened. It's not just that it's hard to improv as you go through the program, but to say at the end of something that wasn't working, where you'd already made the mistakes, to say, no, this isn't happening yet, to me is the mark of a champion.
The other thing I want to address with this, so in the end, like, I think that the podium is good. I mean, I would happily see Jason in the gold medal position in there, because those were extraordinary skates. But I think that the things that Ilia did were astonishing too. When you go and read the comments, whether like you're on Instagram or Twitter or wherever your, you know, skating fandom is, you're often going to find a divisive element in the fandom between the people who are really focused on the athleticism and the extraordinary jumps. And a lot of times you see, especially like fans of like the Russian skaters, where like that stuff is such an explosive element of what they do, you know, versus the people who love the artistry of the sport, the Jason Browns of the world, and that get really, really frustrated that they feel like the system now favors the jumpers, and that that what's great about the sport is dying as people just chase points. And I understand that argument, and I understand the frustration when you do very clearly have some people that have hops but no art, and that can be really, really boring to watch. But it is still an athletic sport.
Well, it is 100% agreed. It is an athletic sport, and the true winners are typically, at least in this day and age, the ones that match those two things equally. Nathan Chen started off as just, to use your word, a hopper. Like he had some artistry in the beginning, but really, if you watch him in his first Olympic Games in 2018 versus you watch his Olympic performances in 2022, it's radically different. And not just because he, you know, won the Olympic gold medal in the second one and then the first one kind of fell apart. It's still just a different Nathan Chen. It's the complete evolution of someone into an artist. And Nathan, only in his few performances I've gotten to see, so even since the Olympic performance, you can see it growing still. And it's wonderful to watch. It's Yuzu Hanyu being able to land the most perfect triple axel I've ever seen anybody land and still be exquisite in every movement. It's the guy who I think is going to win this year's world title, Shoma Uno, who is the epitome of a complete skater right now. He is equal parts artist and jumper.
The all-arounders, I think, are the ones that set the world class. And yes, the jumping can feel like it has an outsized impact on all of it. But then Jason Brown proves that you can compete, without those jumps, as long as you're extraordinarily good and you can do a lot of this stuff. Granted, very few people are on that level, but yeah, like you said, the Shoma Unos of the world, Yuzu and Nathan, who both got there. I think Anna Sherbakova is a pretty good example of on the women's side, where I think that she artistically and athletically is nice. Now, there's a lot to say about the Russians and the complications on that end of things and what they're doing to them.
But no, I see where you're going with it, and you're not wrong. That's just a complicated area.
Yeah.
But regardless, you're not wrong. It's of the current skaters I'm looking at, there's people like Adam Siohan. I'm not saying his name right, but he's from France. He just won Europeans. Thank you.
Yeah.
He is very much the artist and the athlete at the same time. Kevin Arios, another Frenchman, athlete and artist combined. It's like, I'm happy to see it. There's a lot of people out there showing what Jason Brown shows the most to me, which is that I can still be competitive and this can be beautiful. It's a complicated argument. And I think it's much more so talked about in the men's because you have all the quads.
Right. Yeah. I think you see it bleed over into the women's when the Russians are actively involved in the conversation.
I think you also see it this year at US Nationals. I'm going to segue us.
Yeah.
Because you had a similar situation this year where you had a lot of women who kind of danced around the line of where they're at in that combination of athlete and artist. You had Isabeau Levito, who came in as the favorite undeniably this year, even at 15 years old, because she has been so strong in the Grand Prix this year. She was our bronze medalist at US Nationals last year. And she, to me, is very much the epitome of athlete and artist already. Then you have Bradie Tennell, who is on her comeback after a really, really terrible injury took her out of any chance at the Olympics last year. Then you had Amber Glenn. She wears her heart on her sleeve. She is a complete, absolute artist, but she's also the only U.S. woman currently going for a triple axel. So that makes her much more competitive internationally because that's a big jump for the ladies right now. Then you have also Star Andrews. Star Andrews is definitely more artist than athlete at this point. Her jumps are not really in the same league with those other three skaters right now. However, she brings something to the ice artistically that not all of them do. She has a presence and a charisma out there that is very unique to her and it should not go unnoticed. Right, so it's really interesting to have four such different skaters come out and perform in various ways very well in the short and long and see how it all kind of shakes out, but also to see how the judging was handled. Yeah.
So versus the men where we've really kind of dissected some of their individual performances, I think really what we're going to look at the women is just take a look at the podium. And in this case, we're going to look at the top five and talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of some of those elements, but also that if you only just watched it on TV and heard like Johnny and Tara doing it, you would get that they questioned some of the scoring.
They did.
But if you're on the online discourse, people were pissed off about a lot of that. To put it
mildly.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to explore with it. So our top five, Isabeau landed in the gold position. No surprise there. It's what really everybody expected.
And it was deserved. I will 100% land on that one was absolute. She deserved it.
Her long program is the best I've ever seen her skate. And there is a lot of talk about the fact that the way that she does jumps may not be sustainable. Yeah, because she does have a little bit of the Russian jumping technique and she does these really, really deep, knee bends into the jump with maybe a little bit of pre-rotation. And the question is, will her body physically handle that long term? We are not physical therapists. We are not sports doctors.
We're not coaches. We're not even analysts by any real measure.
Right. I can't do any of the things that she can do, and I am not qualified to comment on what the longevity of that would be. I can understand worrying about that, because certainly we don't want a program like the Russians where we destroy young women, and by the time they're 17 or 18, they can't physically move anymore. But for the time being, and in the moment, I think that Isabeau is an exceptional skater, absolutely deserved that win. But it was pretty close coming out of the, like, very, very close coming out of the short program, because Bradie, was not successful on the Grand Prix at all in her comeback, but came into this one looking much, much stronger, refined programs. She's been training in France and has changed up a lot of what she does. There was definitely a move towards more artistry than what we've seen from Bradie in the past. We have talked in the earlier episodes about the fact that, like, I am no fan of Bradie Tennell as a skater. Again, this is not me hating on her as a person. I just don't enjoy her skates, and I never have. But I thought a lot of the stuff that I saw, like the short program, I thought artistically was stronger for her. I really don't like the long program at all. Although I will say her final spin in the long program is extraordinary. I mean, it was really like a wow moment for me in that thing. A great technical skater. The U.S. has always loved her, but
she absolutely, particularly in the short program, was overscored. If you feel like looking on Twitter, but let me just summarize it for you if you don't, you'll see a lot of other figure skaters, other judges, other people that are part of the sport, not dogging on Bradie. It's not a pointed finger at her.
It's not her doing at all.
It's not her doing in any way. It is pointing back at the judging. And the problem that has been seen time after time with figure skating is that you don't really feel like the judging is fair. And many others during this women's competition were called for coming short on their landing. So like under rotating their jumps, meaning that they land more than a half of rotation short of a full rotation at the end. So instead of 3 in a triple, they're only landing 2.5, just to make it clear. But Bradie did not, even though it was very visible that she under-rotated at least 1, if not 2 of her jumps. And while that doesn't sound like it's that much of a big deal, whenever other skaters are getting knocked for it and getting scored very, very much below where she was, it starts feeling like a problem, because you're like, well, why is this person suddenly so much better? And why does it matter when someone else under-rotates a jump, but it really doesn't when Bradie does? It makes you feel not only unsure of what these things really mean, because skating judging is already so vague. It's also not helpful for the skaters themselves, like Bradie, who are getting called as clean whenever she goes internationally, and those judges aren't as friendly to it and she gets called under. It just makes a mess of things, and certainly is not kind to anyone else behind her, making them feel like they will never be scored fairly when she's getting overscored by the amount that she was.
Yeah, like, I mean, you look at some of our up-and-comers who did not fare very well in this competition.
Audrey Shin,
Lindsay Thorgren,
yes.
Who got called on everything. Like, every single possible tiny mistake either of those two skaters made, they were absolutely called on. And I just feel like if they were sitting backstage and watching the stuff, and then they saw Bradie skate and saw those failures, you know, and that's not the right term, but the failure to call those things,
yes,
it would be infuriating. When you look at the short programs, when they're all said and done, the difference between Isabeau and Bradie was like 0.1 or something. It was extraordinarily
something
close.
like that. It was really tight.
And it was not reasonable.
No.
There was no way that Bradie should have been as close to Isabeau.
Absolutely not. And then on the flip side, not for under rotations, but just for overall like components, as you mentioned, Bradie's not exactly known for her artistry. It has definitely improved.
Yeah, it's evolved a lot.
It has. And her overall skating quality is solid. It's not my thing either, but I think I like it a little more than you do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just from a purely pragmatic, as objective as I can be standpoint, it has improved, but it is not as good overall as Amber Glenn's. And Amber Glenn was definitely underscored on her short program.
Yeah. So Amber ended up in 4th in the short program, a hair's breadth behind Star. And both of them had really, really nice short programs.
They did.
Her and Star both totally turned out and were great in the short.
Star's was just a little cleaner, but less complicated and less difficult.
Right. And that's always the thing with Star, is that like she's a consummate performer. I mean, she is electric on ice when she's on, but she just doesn't have the technical level. And that's always a struggle. Amber has the technical, but is not super consistent. But we saw during the Grand Prix that both of those women are podium threats whenever they've got it together. And Amber's the only one out there trying for a triple axel. And she almost landed it clean, and then I think 2-footed it, and it kind of came apart in the long.
Yeah.
But the end result, though, was Amber took 3rd.
Yes.
And her long program, even though she had a couple of bobbles in it, was awesome.
It was great. And I will say, in the long program, she was scored, I would say, favorably and in a fair fashion.
Yeah.
Overall, the scoring in the long program was certainly a lot more fair overall.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is that this is a side, and it's going to sound super gossipy, but it is true. There was a member of the technical team that was calling all of those rotations in the short program that was a former choreographer for Bradie Tennell.
For a long time.
And he was pulled after the short program and replaced for the long. And I want to say all of the things that I have been reading, but I can't claim what's true and what's not. All I can say is he was definitely replaced. And with that, it makes you feel even more that there was enough complaining about, hey, by the way, why did Bradie get called on nothing? Right. And her score was so high and other people skated better, and their scores were so low and they were called on everything. Right.
Yeah. It felt like, when you have the person who determines for the rest of the panel what is a clean landing and what is under rotated, and this person is picky as hell for everybody else, as they should be as a judge.
Yeah.
But then gets really unpicky and uncritical when it comes to the person that they choreographed for years. There is a huge conflict of interest there.
Right. So even if, and I want to give the benefit of the doubt, even if that there wasn't any intentional cheating, to use the dirty word of cheating.
Yeah.
Even if there was no intention behind it, there's also an absolute bias that you can't not have. And so even if you don't mean to have that bias, it's there.
Yeah. So what we heard, without getting too much into the gossip, is that at least one club, if not others, complained about it. That person was removed and they brought in a different technical judge to make those calls. It did seem cleaner. It still felt like Bradie was overscored in the long program.
But that's just been the case with Bradie for years at this point.
Yes. And I've always felt like that, because I've always thrown my hands up at that over the years, because I always felt like the US program wanted to push Bradie into the forefront at all times, even when I just thought she was the inferior skater. And again, she is a talent. She's skilled. She's trained. She's all of those things. I just felt like most of the time there was somebody better, but we've seen with skating that so often there's that feeling of predetermination. Like
yes.
the individual federations know who they want in those places, and they will try their damnedest to make it happen regardless of what actually happens the night of the skate, which is what should matter.
Oh, that's just the story of figure skating, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a brutal thing, and we're going to do a show soon talking about just like what figure skating needs to do to bring itself back up to prominence, at least here in the US. Oof. But that's too much to get into now.
But actually, what you just brought up in terms of the predetermination is a really nice segue into ice dance, because man, if there is a place where that happens the most, it is ice dance. And I see that we also missed somebody, didn't we?
We missed Josephine Lee. I like your segue, but I wanted to hit on the fact that, we talked about our podium for the women that was Isabeau and then Bradie and then Amber. I really feel like Amber should have been the silver over Bradie, and a lot of people did too. Star ended up on 4th, and Star was really happy with that fourth position.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, at nationals, that actually is a medal. That's the pewter medal. We always think of the podium as 3, but the fourth place actually does figure in on the national level. But there was one of our, fresh out of juniors, first time on nationals skaters, Josephine Lee, who came in, didn't have a really great short program, was okay, but her free skate was baller. Like
it was fantastic.
Absolute crowd pleaser. Huge response to it. And I think she skated she was in the first of the second to last group. So essentially the 12th position. If you're going in reverse order on all of it, I don't know what position she was in ahead of that though.
But regardless, she came in and moved up to 5th place. And I have to give myself a tiny little pat on the back because I was watching some of the practice sessions.
Yeah.
And she showed up and within 2 seconds, I was like, she's one to watch.
Yep.
And man, if she didn't prove me right,
yeah,
I felt good about it.
You were spot on. You saw the quality immediately.
And I mean, it wasn't hard. I mean, she just has the thing.
She has the thing.
And it was great to watch her come out in the long program and really, really take ownership of it and be rewarded by the judges. I don't think enough. But again, to your predetermination conversation, she's new, she's fresh, she's 14. There was no hype behind her. So coming in 5th is amazing for her.
Yeah, huge thing. Yeah.
She probably should have come in ahead of Star.
Yeah. Yeah.
As much as I love Star.
I think that if everything was even and fair, and granted, I mean, especially once you get into artistic stuff, things get real subjective real fast, and we are not judges. But my podium would have absolutely been Isabeau, Amber, Bradie, then Josephine in the 4th position, and then Star in 5th. And that's no disrespect to Star because I really have liked her skating a lot this season. But Josephine's long program was one of the highlights of the comp. So
it was super stellar.
Yeah. Really looking forward to seeing more from her. But like you were saying,
sorry to get ahead of myself, but I was starting to think about Chock Bates.
Yeah. So like you were saying, predetermination has haunted ice dance for forever.
The worst.
Because there's been that feeling for decades that people already knew exactly what the podium was going to look like before a competition even happened. Like it was already, as long as people didn't mess up so massively that the judges couldn't overcorrect for it, that you kind of just...
Sometimes even then.
Well, we've certainly seen that happen and controversies in years past over it. But going into this one, you had very, very clear favorites with Chock Bates.
Deserved favorites. I will give them full credit. They deserve to be 100% the favorites. They were the absolute class of this field.
Oh, yeah. Well, and also, I mean, they're long-term competitors. They have done multiple Olympics. They have won all types of titles all over the place. Like they are veteran, super artistic, highly technical performers that are so great at what they do. And they're distinct, which is one of the things that's you really want out of an ice dance pair is an identity.
That is exactly it. Like Chock and Bates both get the love from the judges and unfortunately sometimes not so much because of the fact that they are unique. They push the envelope. They're always trying something new. They're trying to push themselves and they become the avant-garde skaters. Even though if you watch them, it doesn't feel like it should be considered that. By ice dance standards, they are. And that sometimes is embraced and sometimes is definitely not embraced at all. This season has been rough for them. And to be fair, at the beginning of this season, whenever they were on the Grand Prix, their long program in particular was just falling flat. However, both of their short and their long program, I think at U.S. Nationals, were leaps and bounds ahead of where they started this season and absolutely put them in really good shape going into the World Championships.
Basically, they came into the competitive season a little late because they had been touring all over the world and
got engaged,
and they had a lot going on before, and so they got their training and choreography going a little bit late, and it showed.
Yes,
even though they still showed and won Grand Prix events. At the same time, they were not at the quality level that you were expecting, and simultaneously. You were seeing the Canadian pair explode, go from being a solid but relatively mid-list kind of dance pair in the Olympic season to suddenly the top of lists with two extraordinary programs with
Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier.
Yeah, I mean, they've been extraordinary this season. for the Canadians. And Chock and Bates, I mean, they're my favorite dance pair. They're extraordinarily talented. They have iconic programs that are astonishing, but they were definitely not performing up to par earlier in the season, especially with that long program, because it was
messy,
unappealing early on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, they've definitely changed the entire thematic of the long program. I will say the long program still, I'm not a fan of the music that they chose.
Yeah, it's kind of...
But the program itself and the choreography and what they're doing with that is beautiful. Like, they've really evolved it to a place where it's like, I can see the vision that they have now. And they are those ice dancers where they do have a vision. There is a specific voice that they're going for. They have characters they are playing, which is the type of ice dance I like, where it feels like it's not just doing a cha-cha. No offense to the cha-cha, but it's not my...
All offense to the cha-cha. Fuck the cha-cha.
Okay.
I wouldn't even know the cha-cha if I saw
again.
it. Cha-cha, real smooth.
It's definitely not my thing whenever it's just the predetermined dance on ice. Whenever it's something where you feel like they're actually really skating with each other, skating with the ice itself. Like, it's like, it sounds so... the phrase that keeps coming to mind is hoity-toity, but it's that feeling of they are trying to create something. They're giving you 4.5 minutes of art. Ice dance should feel that way, and Chock and Bates are wonderful at doing that, at creating moments, at creating things that are memorable and unique. And I feel like they're getting there with this one.
Yeah,
I still don't feel the same magic that I have felt for the past couple of seasons with their long programs where you really had that like wow moment. But I definitely felt the vibes from them a lot stronger this time. And their scores are starting to creep towards where they really should be.
They refined the hell out of it. They've been, if you watch them through this season, every iteration is different. Every time you see them on the ice, they've changed, added, refined, made the big moments bigger, fixed little problems. I think they had some choreographic sequence things where they got downgraded early on because some of that scoring changed this year. And a lot of teams did struggle with that this season, where there were things people were getting dinged on and getting their levels dropped because they didn't have some little thing that was kind of a new thing in the judging this season. But anyway, Chock and Bates won definitively. And we're really, really strong. I know it's a pretty polarized situation as far as the long programs, as far as a lot of people not necessarily liking that one. But I don't think there's any argument that they were the top of the field.
No, and something that I really appreciated actually was hearing Evan Bates twice in interviews bring up the fact that this is them going for a world title.
Yeah.
Earlier in the season, everything was, we're doing this for us. We don't really know how we feel about the future. You know, every program is its own. It was all that stuff. And this time he came in and was very clear in the messaging of, this is us advancing towards what we hope will be our first world title.
Right.
They have been in the game for a long time. And while it might not make sense to someone who doesn't watch a lot of figure skating, to be very clear, people don't say that a lot. The fact that Evan Bates is saying the mission out loud to a commentator, to an interviewer, is actually different.
Yeah.
When they're at a press conference and it's a big, group of press, they might say something like that. Yeah, I want my Olympic medal. I want this. But whenever they're doing the TV interview, it's always the soft sell of like, I just want to make myself happy and I don't really want to think too much about this. It's always kind of sugar coated because skating kind of weirdly demands it of them. The whole identity of figure skating in the United States, and this is something we can get into deeper on another episode.
Yeah.
It's still a little sugar coated.
It babies it a little bit.
Yeah. So to hear Evan Bates just say, I want that medal, go him. Fuck yes. I want to hear it. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah,
I want to hear the fight from you.
It's like hearing Ilia Malinin say, I'm going after my title.
Yeah, my title. I want to claim my title.
Right. Like, this is a guy who is going into this saying, I have set this goal for myself, and in my mind, that's mine. I'm going for it.
And it was the same with Isabeau Levito.
Yeah.
Her coming in and being like, I was shooting for first. I appreciated that she even kind of stopped and was like, I hope that doesn't sound cocky, but it's just the truth. I'm
Right.
like, great. Thank you, Isabeau Levito, for coming in and just saying what you want.
Yeah.
I love it.
In any other sport, like that'd be expected.
Yes.
You don't come to play unless you want to win.
Exactly.
In this sport, you're aware that for some people, that the opportunity to take the podium is very, very slim for 3/4 of the field. Because competitively, going in that because of the technical levels and whatever, some people just can't compete on that level all the time. And I think that's a struggle sometimes for some fans coming in, that like occasionally you'll see people online talk about the fact that like when you're excited to take 5th place, that's like, oh God, that's what a weak, crappy sport, because why would you be excited to lose?
I hate that.
Yeah. And I hate that too, because it doesn't recognize the accomplishments that, that go on in that stuff. But if you're a football fan or a baseball fan or whatever, 2nd place is always the first loser. So like, it's a different kind of mindset.
Ugh.
This sport is not like that.
No.
And please, shut up with that nonsense, because you don't understand what's going on here. And just the remarkable achievement for any of these athletes to even show up at a national competition.
Exactly. You're at the national championships. That alone is a massive accomplishment. And then to come in, so I'm thinking about Jimmy Ma right now. I'm like saying, I'm 5th in the country. Think about that. That's a huge accomplishment. That is not first loser or 5th, 4th loser, I guess, if you're in 5th or whatever. But it's like, I don't know, makes it all worthwhile to say, I went there and could compete with the best in the country and show up. That's an enormous win.
Yeah, I mean, the armchair quarterback, the classic person who's sitting in their chair who could never do what that athlete is doing, but feels confident in saying that like, oh, well, they suck because they couldn't land this, couldn't hit this level in the sport. But meanwhile, that like, literally competing at this level is so far beyond the average person's capability. It's already a huge accomplishment. Anyway, that round is beyond all of this stuff, and particularly in ice dance, like, because it is not the jumper sport or whatever.
It's the twizzle sport.
It's the twizzle sport. Anyway, like, again, Chock and Bates, like, it'll be really interesting to see once they get to the world level, like how that shapes up against the Canadians.
I'm curious to see how they compete against the Canadians at 4 continents, because Piper and Paul are going to be there. So
that'll be a preview for Worlds. And as we know with ice dance, it isn't always just what you did that night.
No.
There's so much flavor of going in, whether it's legit or not. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of BS.
Yeah.
The judges really start to set expectations in ice dance based on the stuff that comes out ahead of, that comes up ahead of time. Now, should either one of those teams go into 4 continents and bork it, and like just have a problem? And the thing about ice dance is that the room for error is really, really small.
Oh, yeah.
You trip, throw one twizzle a little out of sequence, God forbid somebody falls in a footwork sequence, and you can just shit away your whole like plan for the season. You know?
And it won't just affect you at this competition, it'll affect you for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So if either Piper and Paul or Madison and Evan fuck up at 4 continents against each other, it could absolutely impact them at World Championships.
Yeah. And we know that Piper and Paul are coming in with Piper recovering from an appendectomy.
Yeah.
And they've been off the ice for a while because of that, for letting her mend. So we may not get them at 100%. And it will be really interesting to see what happens in a couple of weeks at 4 continents with that. As far as the rest of the field goes, their top spot, or the 2nd and 3rd spots were pretty good.
I think they were very good.
Yeah.
And they show a ton of promise for the future of ice dance in the United States for when Maddie and Evan do retire, which who knows when that'll be. I don't know if they're going to make another full quad to the next Olympics or if this is going to be it. Maybe they'll go another year. Who knows? They don't know. It sounds like. I mean, just keep going. They're wonderful. And it's nice to see, people in their 30s skating.
Yeah.
But it was Green and Parsons got the silver and did a great job. I really liked their programs last season better.
Much better. I'm not crazy about these two.
But I really do see a ton of promise in them. And I think that they're going to keep moving up the ranks. And then Carrera and Ponomarenko got the bronze. They have definitely improved a lot, especially Ponomarenko in this season. But I'm admittedly still not quite in love with them. So I'm happy to see them doing better. I don't find them super compelling yet, but give it time. Who knows? I mean, ice dance is the long game. Like, it's not like single skaters where you only get this like 2 to 6 year window, depending on how good you are with all the jumps. But it definitely takes a lot longer to kind of find yourself and with your partner kind of become one. And I don't feel like those two teams have quite found it yet. Green and Parsons definitely are closer.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I felt like last year they showed a much more avant-garde identity in their skating.
But they had the best lift of the competition.
Oh, that lift is amazing.
The short program lift from Green and Parsons was like slow motion around the neck. And I was like, damn.
The level, it shows a level of control on her end that is pretty astonishing.
Yeah. And strength on his. Because it was both of them in that moment. I was like, okay. Yeah. Like, that's something.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I'll note too that in this competition you saw the Brown siblings.
Their first nationals.
Yeah, Una and Gage Brown, who
are very internet famous.
Yeah, they're super internet famous. They dominated the junior ice dance competitions.
World junior champions.
Yeah, they are siblings, so of course that always kind of, it's a bonus and a detraction, because you have two people that have grown up together, and so they are fully in sync with each other. At the same time, it limits some of the things thematically that you can do with
without it being creepy.
Right. But they are really talented and very creative. But what we did see going into this was a lot less speed than I would have expected from them.
Yeah, they were slower.
And the lack of refinement was far more visible in this competition when compared to a lot of the more senior teams. But they're very young. I mean, they're like...
Oh, they're babies.
They're 18 and 20.
For ice dance, that is babies.
Yeah, if they can ride this out long term, I think they'll really become a force to reckon with. I think that it's also going to be a matter of choosing music and programs that are more favorable to the judges, because it does seem like they do have a little bit of a rut as far as... And I say this always liking their musical choices because it's my vibe. But I think they need a little more variety.
Variety and maturity.
Yeah, variety and maturity, I think is that, yeah. The thing we were really missing out of that competition was Hawaii and Baker. Kate Hawaii and Jean-Luc Baker did not compete because Kate has a lingering injury that she needed to recover from. And so they are sitting out a couple of the competitions. They were named to the world team, as they should, because they were fantastic on the Grand Prix. But their presence was so missed, not just because they are wonderful people and they're always lovely to see on the scene, but because their two programs this season have been fantastic.
They're stellar. They are two of my favorite programs from anybody this season. I love both of them. And I agree. I like Kate and Jean-Luc. Thank you. How could I forget Jean-Luc Picard, except not?
Yeah, but named after
Jean-Luc Picard. I adore them. Like, as skaters, as humans, as representatives of the sport. They are extraordinary, and they are never, ever appreciated enough by the judges, and it makes me so angry every time I see it.
Consistently underrated, underscored, and underappreciated by the judges. And seriously, screw you guys for consistently not giving them the marks they deserve, particularly in this season where they have been wonderful.
Absolutely. 100%.
I will fight you on this, and I'm bigger than you. Just be ready. But yeah, I really look forward to seeing them at Worlds, and I'm so glad that they got named to that based on their body of work this season. Lastly, pairs, and there's not that much to talk about in pairs.
No, there's not. There's Alexa and Brandon.
Yeah, so Alexa and Brandon, who have been great this whole season, they are world champions from last year.
Which is incredible to say out loud.
Yes. I mean, for the Americans to have a world champion in pairs is freaking crazy, really.
Yes.
But they have been outstanding this season. They keep getting better. This is the best that I've seen them this season.
Yeah, sure.
The programs were nicely refined. They got their side-by-side jumps in, which has been a struggle this season, and just looked really terrific. But I think the story with them is really one, going to Worlds, where they'll face off up against our faves from the Japanese pairs team with Mira and Kihara, who are just
so wonderful.
They're absolutely wonderful. And as much as I like Alexa and Brandon, Mira and Kihara are my whole heart this season. My real feeling is that this is the end for them.
Yeah.
Everything about them, when you see them backstage and when you see them in interviews, They're really going into things with a lot of retrospective elements, and I think that is indicative of a pair that know they're going to hang it up at the end of the season, and they're trying to end it off with another world title.
And they have a really good shot at it. It's really between them and Miura and Kihara. It's like they are both really close in their top scorers this year. I think the Japanese team has the advantage for sure because they are just more well-rounded skaters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But as to use Johnny Weir's phrase, ice is slippery.
Yep.
Anything can happen, and they are the reigning world champions. So that's not nothing coming in. So I really do feel like they have a very, very good shot of winning, or at least a silver at minimum, if they show up like they did at Nationals. And they're wonderful to watch. But I agree, as they were finishing both their short program and their long especially, you could see the emotion on their face. And there were a few shots of them backstage where you just had this like, oh, these look like our last Nationals tears happening right now. And who knows, they could change their mind. But Alexa has been pretty open about the fact that she wants to start a family, and she's 31. So the writing is very much on the wall of, unless there's a change of heart, it really does feel like they're about to say goodbye.
Yeah. The silver for the pairs is also worth noting. We've seen Emily Chen and Spencer Howe in the Grand Prix this season. We are always struck in our household every time we watch them about how, like, Spencer Howe seems like a dude we want to hang with. Like,
he just seems so chill and
his
cool.
vibe is he's so California vibe, like, just like looks like a really amiable guy, a fun dude. Emily Chen always looks intimidating and grumpy, and they always look like an odd pair on the ice. They often don't look like they necessarily like each other all that much.
That's really what I noticed. Like, I hate to even say she looks grumpy. She just looks very intense and a little bit scary, which, I mean, in figure skating in pairs, good for her for being scary. But their vibes just don't match.
Yeah.
And you'll see them on the ice and even backstage sometimes, and they just don't seem to make eye contact very much. They don't, in the kiss and cry, really speak to each other. It always just feels like vaguely tense, and I could be projecting, but it does feel awkward sometimes watching them skate together.
This is the first competition where I saw them look good. I mean, I thought
they were solid.
They were very, very solid. They had some really, really cool lifts.
And to be fair, on the Grand Prix, they had some beautiful moments. They just didn't have two put together programs.
This was the time, especially coming out of the free skate, where they looked happy. Emily was smiling. They looked like they were connected.
Oh, now I feel like you were like, she looked good because she smiled.
I know. This is not me telling Emily Chen to smile. Emily Chen, if you hear this, I am absolutely not telling you that you need to smile to be pretty or whatever crappy mansplaining BS like is out there.
Thank you.
It's more just seeing genuine emotion. You know, it's tough to see. It's the dichotomy of a pair where one person is very chill and happy and smiling, and the other one looks kind of grim, like through a lot of it. And this time that changed. Their vibe changed. They looked just way better on the ice together. It came together a lot nicer. And they were not like point-wise competitive with Alexa and Brandon at all.
No.
But still, they put on a good performance, and they were very worthy of that silver category.
Absolutely. And I feel like they could end up being and becoming much more competitive internationally. I just hope that they like each other. At least enough to work with each other.
Yeah, and we could be misreading it. And again, like, there's a lot of watching things at home and making assumptions based on
we could be misreading this entirely.
Right. Emily Chen could be the most pleasant person in the world off the ice. Like, Isabeau Levito could be a hateful monster at the moment that she walks off of camera. You don't know, right? Like, we only have so much to go on.
But one thing I do know is, I mean, just watching them skate together, they're a pair. You need them to feel like they're skating together. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I've been missing with them until Nationals.
Yeah.
Frankly, there's plenty of pairs teams that don't love each other and think each other's the best person in the world. And dance even more so. But at the same time, when you are on the ice, you're performing, and you are two people that need to perform together. And if that connection doesn't at least translate in that capacity, you lose ground. You certainly lose an audience. And I think this time you really saw them connect. And if they can at least put on the show, I mean, frankly, it's none of my business if they can connect off the ice.
Right.
It's like, just connect on the ice so that it makes me feel something when I'm watching you, because that's kind of part of the deal.
Right. I mean, it's the difference looking at them versus like Alexa and Brandon, who, you know, we look at and we know that they are a working pair. Like, you know, she is married, like they are friends who skate together and do a fantastic job, and they connect very, very well on the ice. And then you take Miura and Kuhara, who have that genuine something special, that extra magic that feels like ice dancers do when they're really good, but they have it in pairs, and they have both the artistry and the jumps to match it. But just watching them on ice is delightful because you just feel the two of them connected the whole time. That kind of thing is just missing from the rest of the pairs competition.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've been specifically talking about the silver medalists, but in general, for the rest of the competition there, frankly, that was the least of the concerns I had, was the connection between the skaters. There were a lot of juniors teams who were just kind of making their way up the ranks. You know, this is either their first senior nationals or maybe second, and they're just trying to figure out what they're doing. A lot of new pairs that have just joined up together in the off season, and they're competing together for the first time, or maybe just the second or third. So there's a lot of reasons for it to feel rough. But when you're watching it in prime time on Saturday night, which for skating has not happened a lot this year since the Olympics, it really makes you stop and pause. Like, why on earth did you air the pairs with only 12 total competitors, and most of whom are not at a senior level at this point? They're doing side-by-side double jumps. They were doing side-by-side triples in the 90s, guys. It felt weak. And then you had Jason Brown and Ilia Malinin bringing it like crazy on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
What the actual hell?
Yeah.
It made no sense, and it really aggravated me. And that's no disrespect to Alexa and Brandon being marquees and the reigning world champions. They deserve their moment. But this is prime time on a Saturday night. You show Ilia and Jason. The United States Figure Skating Association should have made sure that the men's long was Saturday night. So that is what is shown on NBC. So because, my God, no skating is getting visibility, and then you show a bunch of pairs teams that can't land side-by-side double sow cows. No.
Yeah. The pairs competition was just dominated by people going out and throwing really, really low level jumps. In the thing, you know, like, you know, Johnny and Tara talk about all the time is that, you know, this is the build up to the Olympics. This is the start of the new Olympic quad cycle. This is the time to get out and make your name and build up. And then you have a whole bunch of people just throwing lower tier jumps in the pairs competition when they should be showing they have fire, and instead they just do not look like strong teams. And that a lot of them are strategically basing their programs around, well, if we miss this, well, then we throw a double, because they're afraid of falling and losing points. But that is not a good strategy, and it doesn't pay off. And so, yeah, the end result was a really forgettable pairs competition, with the exception of the top two spots and a few things here and there. I mean, there were like two pairs that were like only like 6 months old. You know, their pairing was only their partnership's only 6 months old.
Medalist.
Which had at one point like the guy more or less chucking the woman into the boards.
Yeah, she came down out of the triple twist, and he caught her, and literally it sort of looked like he just chucked her into the boards. Yeah. It wasn't actually him doing that, but the visual wasn't kind.
It's kind of hilarious, actually. And they handle it like good sports, and I think
they're both professionals too. Like, they've been at this a long time. It's a new pairing. Yeah. So their timing isn't the best. Right. That's the thing. Like, I can't point at any of these teams and be like, you are bad. It's more like, there's some of them that were just not, they're kind of bad. But a lot of them, for the most part, are teams that are just figuring each other out, whether it's because they're young and they're still just figuring out how to be a senior skater, or they're teams that are just coming together and haven't quite gelled with their timing yet. I get it. It's more the frustration with just the pairs in general. At that whole aspect of skating right now is just in trouble. Yeah. And that many teams coming out and not fighting. I would much rather see them come out and fall on triple toes than just casually do an intentional double toe. It's annoying. I mean, frankly, because it makes you feel like, to your point, we're going into the next 4 years towards the Olympics. Are they just kind of going, well, the Russians aren't here pushing us, so we're just going to kind of wing it. And that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not their mentality or their intention, but you have this door wide open right now because if anything, pairs has been dominated by Russia for millennia is what it feels like, but decades. And right now they're not there. Take advantage of your moment to advance, to say, hey, by the way, we can be just as good. But whenever Russians go out and they're doing side-by-side triple Lutzes and you can't even bother to try a triple toe, it does make you question why you're in seniors. I have a lot of feelings about this.
Yeah. And it's tough. I mean, if you stuck with us this long, I mean, I feel like,
I'm impressed.
Yeah. I mean, but like, obviously,
and
like,
grateful.
we've been pretty critical about a lot of stuff, but there's a lot to be excited about in this competition. I mean, just kind of summing up the stuff. I mean, Ilia, like astonishing athleticism, growing artistry,
absolutely
and
the future of men's skating in this country.
Jason Brown, like the epitome of the artistic skater, delivering things that like skaters are going to watch for decades.
Please don't leave us.
Yes, I mean, hopefully he sticks around because obviously he still has so much to give. The men stepping up after a bad short with oh my gosh, I'm going to miss his name up.
Andrew Torgashev.
Andrew Torgashev, like that really made me want to see more of that guy because he was refined.
It was statement skating.
Yeah, that was exciting stuff.
And I want to also give a special shout out to Camden Pukkanen. You're going to get better again. I have to believe.
Yeah, we haven't talked about him because he was not impressive at this particular competition, but he is one of the alternates for Worlds. So, his body of work has still kept him there. Torgashev is tentatively part of the Worlds team, but there's something about the ISU requirements that he doesn't have.
It's that before the World Championships, he has to score a certain minimum points at another international event. I don't know what that means, and there certainly aren't that many internationals before Worlds, so Camden might be our guy. But I guess the U.S. Figure Skating Association has a plan because he's not actually on the Four Continents team. So
and that makes no sense because that's the obvious. I mean, if he was available, because we know like Ilia and Jason are both not skating Four Continents, which is disappointing because they're here. They're in America. They're going to be at Colorado Springs. It would be nice to have them on home ice, but they are both already committed to another event, one that pays them money. So
can't blame them there.
No, not at all, man. Like
get paid.
Get paid. This is not a cheap sport to be in.
Nope.
Make that dollar. But yeah, that would seem like the most obvious opportunity for Andrew to actually go and get whatever those points are. So his standing is proper.
It's a bit confusing, but regardless, he is technically on the world team. We'll see if he actually gets to go.
Yeah.
But regardless, the men's competition gave me hope and really did make me feel like the program has a lot of potential for the next 4 years, whether or not Nathan Chen comes back. I have complicated feelings about that because I miss Nathan hard, but I also really love seeing this new generation of skaters come up and get to like really shine. And I think there's a lot of potential there. I think the women's field has a lot of those same types of vibes where it's like you have the obvious with Isabeau Levito, but then you also have Lindsay Thorngren, Audrey Shin, Josephine Lee, and many others where you feel like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. They just need to find their footing and be given the time to grow and develop.
I think one of the things that was kind of noted was that Josephine Lee at 14, which is so young to be at this level, probably actually won't be old enough to go to the Olympics if that happens.
Yeah, because of the age change that the ISU has implemented. There's a lot of skaters that are going to be on that bubble.
It's going to be interesting to see how that happens. And when it comes to the age thing, particularly when we saw everything that happened with Kamila Valieva and the fact that like she got special treatment, partially because she's Russian, but partially because she's was 15.
A protected person.
Yeah, she's a protected class. And that felt really unfair to a lot of skaters that the adults were being held to a different standard than their competitors who were younger.
When it comes to drugging, yeah.
That seems like horseshit. And because it is. And so that definitely, there was a lot of issues that came to light because of that situation. And, the age change will definitely change the sport in a lot of ways because the Russian standard of grind out 15, 16, 17-year-old jumping phenomenons that end up so debilitated by their training that they can't walk anymore. Or things like Yevgenia, oh my gosh, how do you say her last name? Yevgenia Medeva. Yanni. She likes to go by Yanni. Yanni can't even do certain jumps anymore because she
No.
can't turn certain ways because the training that, and the Russian Federation is full of bright young stars that they wore out very, very early. The Empress is the exception to the rule, right? To make it into her, 23, 24. And
I think she's 25 doing triple axels out there.
And she's astonishing. The Empress is incredible.
She is.
But yeah, so, seeing what the sport looks like as we go along and those high level Olympic competitions no longer allow the kids in, that's going to change things because, we've depended on that as well. Look at us fielding people like Alyssa Liu, who was only 16 or 17.
Tara Lipinski,
who won at 15 years old and looked like she was 12.
And also had to leave the sport early because doing all of her triple loop combinations pretty much devastated her to the point where she physically wasn't going to be able to skate that much anymore.
And that's what a lot of people worry about with Isabeau, that the stuff that she's doing now at 15 will be, problems down the line. And we'll see. Every physical body is different.
And it's a sport. Every sport has this problem. It's just thinking through how old these girls are and how much again, this is a whole other conversation, but thinking about how you do it. Injuries and problems with body image and anything like that plague every sport, especially think about gymnasts and what they have to go through and how much you hear about these problems that are very, very similar in gymnastics to figure skating. It's not new, but what is that hopefully we continue to call out the problems and say, hey, instead of just accepting this is just the way things work, we actually say, hey, by the way, these are 15-year-old girls and you're ruining the rest of their lives. This isn't just you win an Olympic gold medal and then you can't walk by the time you're 30. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that really worth it?
And this is the problem that so many professional and amateur sports have, which is you throw it all away young for the glory and the competition, and then have lifetime of pain. Look at like football players and stuff like that. How many of them are just irrevocably damaged by what they did to play at that, elite level. And deciding whether or not that is worth it is a whole other question. But that's
not one for tonight.
Not one for us to talk about today. I think with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. I hope that you enjoyed our kind of dissection of the U.S. Nationals. Obviously, there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot of questions raised. There's the problems that skating always has, which is that it is this beautiful, interesting, compelling musical sport that is plagued by controversy and shitty scoring and systems that are just made opaque and confusing for the audience. And it can be frustrating as a fan to watch it because of those things. But at the same time, there's so much to love. And so hopefully we see some great competitions coming up. Hopefully you sustain that love with us as well.
And just think about Jason Brown as you fall asleep this evening. Be happy that he is still out there figure skating and making people happy, because really, what more can you ask for?
Yeah.
It's just him.
Right. Put those skates into that skating hall of fame of the things that you go back and watch whenever you need a lift up and loving humanity, because those are instant classics. And, those are the things to revisit when you need to be reminded like how great this sport is.
And with that, I think it's time for us to say farewell for this evening.
Yeah. Scoreography is available online at scoreography.show. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Podcasts and probably a lot of the other platforms too, if it's already been aggregated there. I don't know. There's still some work on my end to get those things out there. We are ostensibly on social media, but to be honest, we haven't been doing it very much lately.
We're going to get better.
Yeah, you can find Scoreography on Instagram and Twitter. We haven't really touched them for a while. Twitter's a shit show and Instagram's a whole thing, but we're going to get back out there and do it. And there's new platforms coming, and hopefully some of them will be cool. So,
and we'd actually legitimately, in all sincerity, love to talk to you, because talking about figure skating is obviously something we love to do. So please talk to us. It's fun.
Hopefully you join us again next time when we're talking about the road to Worlds.
The Four Continents competition.
The Four Continents competition. And like we said earlier, an episode that's just going to be dedicated to figuring out what this sport needs to do to stay compelling to audiences and fans and advertisers and everything here in the States, because there are significant issues with that going forward that need to be addressed. But for now, my name is Adrian Buskey.
And I am Wendy Buskey.
Thank you for listening to Scoreography.
Bye.